All right, and welcome to Baarns Heller. See, I'm changing it today because he's not showing up now. Mr. Heller has been under the weather the last few days. He was supposed to be recording a brand new audiobook this week at Macmillan, and he has been ill after attending the Audies last week, and so we feel bad for him. He may pop in here before the end, but what's really super cool is that I have Tim here with me. And Tim, the one thing I absolutely love, now this comes from a guy who your last name is spelled funny. I don't even know if I spelled it right. So
It's
pronounce it
spelled
for us.
funny, it's
Now,
pronounced
coming
funny.
from a guy who has a last name that's spelled funny and people can't pronounce or they wonder what it is, can you pronounce your last name for us?
Loon-i-bus.
Say that again.
Lunabus.
Cool.
And I was
Now,
trying to figure out how to make it look like I was playing a violin for Johnny, but I don't have it.
oh,
So,
okay. Okay. Well, he's I hope he feels better. And him and I have been communicating behind the scenes, but I know he just doesn't feel great. And
no, I know.
so, and he's one of those guys that tends to do all this stuff whether he feels great or not. So he may pop in before we're done. So let's pretend he is here. Two
Okay.
things for those of you out there. One, in the chat, go ahead and you can add things. We have something new, and that's that people who are silly enough to do it can now do the super chat thing, and you can throw $5. I mean, I feel like I'm back in my stripper days. I mean, I made my living as a no, I did not. Nobody would ever pay me anything to do that. But so you can super chat us now and throw something, which does help the channel, and everything that comes in we end up putting back in.
And will I see that on here? I'm not seeing anything.
So far, let me see. Let me see. You should see something well, let me watch this. I'm going to put up something. So for those of you that don't know, let me introduce Tim
Yeah.
first. You did pronounce your name. But here's the cool thing. This guy has been acting for 150 years. So it's amazing that he still looks, like he's 20. And I'm going to put up his IMDb and what I suspect. There we go. So
There
see,
it
there
is.
you see the first one. And
Hey, Tom.
and then I just put up his IMDb link. If you want to get blown away about Tim, go to his IMDb and you will see that so first thing, it's hard to believe you're that old. But your first now coming from a guy that's older than you, okay? So I can't throw too many stones. The first thing that I see is you were on. I don't even know how you do this as a young guy. You were on The Bold and the Beautiful. Now, I understand the beauty part. That fits your image perfectly. Bold, you're working on it, obviously. But was that the first
My
thing you?
very first TV job. Yeah.
How do you get a job like that when you're a young guy and you haven't done anything and you end up on a soap? And I don't care if you did. I mean, one, no one ever asked me to do a cameo on anything. Two, I live here in Hollywood like you do, or I live close enough. I'm 30 minutes away. What were you doing at that time? How in the world did you get on
You
that
know,
sort
my
of thing?
my my very first two jobs came from on soaps, and one was the first one, Bold and the Beautiful, was because they used to back then. It's not done anymore, I don't think. Is have showcases with casting directors at these places, and I did one with Christy Dooley, and so then she called me in right away, and then and that was an awesome experience. I mean, it couldn't have had a better first day job because everyone, once they found out it was my first time, they were just all so supportive and friendly and everything. It didn't start out that way because one of the woman who I was playing, her assistant, Darlene, I forget her full name, but she was like the matriarch of the family, and when she saw me, she was like, "Oh, here's some upstart wants to try to take away my thunder on screen." So she was really difficult in rehearsal, really like not
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 supportive.
friendly. Yeah, and made it very clear. And then when she realized that I wasn't there, I'm not like that as an actor, that I was just, there to share the vision, even when I'm just saying, "Yes, ma'am." And by the end, she was pinching my cheek, and I mean, everyone was great.
Well,
And then
that's
this other one was Santa Barbara, and that was because I was involved with a theater company called the California Cottage Theater, and with a very close friend at the time who he became like a family member for me, Roy Brock-Smith, great character actor. But he, I was playing this character, and Man, I can't think of the casting director's name as a guy, but he just offered it to me that later that week, and
But-
so that was cool. And that
So
was the first time I dealt with it's called Island Boy, and he was probably speaking in pidgin if I think back on it, but it was some type of accented character, and that's not what I was about. And so I just went in and made the decision. I'm just going to do this standard American and let's see what happens. And if I have to get in a conversation with a producer, I was ready to do that. But no one said anything. It just went along fine. I had a couple of scenes and yeah, so that was awesome.
wow. Well, the thing is what I really love is that you're an overnight success, because that I'm looking at the IMDb on another screen here, and that is 30 years ago. If I do my math, I'm not great at math sometimes, but 1993. For those of you who are age
31.
challenged, some of you were not alive at that point. But this is an interesting thing and a fascinating thing. So at some point, okay, your bio says, you're a quote mixed race. I'm thinking, hey, Daytona 500, maybe a monster truck rally. Um, so I do think, generalization, you're perceived as being a little more on the Asian side than
Yeah,
mixed race side. Is that close?
that is correct.
Okay.
By non-Asians.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. That's fair. I have in-laws who are from Taiwan, and the funniest thing in the world when we get together is they say all white people look the same, and I just cracked up when I heard that, and I realized, it's just every race thinks the other ones all look the same because they're just
Yeah,
not familiar with it, and I suspect now you also. If I understand it right, German and Irish are a big part of your background as well. Is
correct.
that close?
Correct. I call him my biological father, but Bill, he ran away when I was 4. And, but he was a soldier who brought over my mom from Korea at the
Yeah.
time, and
Okay.
he was German Irish.
Okay.
And actually, in our ancestry is a famous German writer named Heinrich Heine. Heine?
Yeah, okay.
Heine.
Okay.
I
Uh,
found out from a producer once when I was working on a film, and he was like, he was German, and when he found that out, he went crazy because he said that's one of 3 authors that every German kid had to learn
yeah,
in school.
okay. But
So
you didn't
anyway,
get to
has
spend.
nothing to do with me except that
Okay.
we're related,
Okay. So when
and I like to write.
at some point here, you took some time off of acting. What did you do in the interim there? Now, because you have 30 years of acting, but then in the middle, you took, I don't know, 5, 8 years off.
Yeah, it was about 7, and it was essentially I was no longer the young buck, and I was not seen as being old enough. This is where the Asian blood worked against me. Wasn't seen as old enough for characters that I clearly was old enough for.
Okay.
And so I just sort of fell off the face of the earth, and I had to think of a plan B, which I never thought of,
Okay.
never expected to have to. But that's also a sign of the times. And then I ended up leaving, and SAG-AFTRA, uh, they're great at career counseling, and they helped me put together what they called a functional resume, since all I had was acting stuff, and I had some other stuff, but I also had produced theater, quite a lot of theater, and so we put together a functional resume, and then I became a business administrator. I basically helped run with Tim Deng, who was the artistic director at the time, long time, of East West Players, which was the largest Asian American theater company in the country and the longest running theater of color in the country.
Wow.
Consecutively, something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then from there, I was there for about 2.5 years, and it just wasn't sustainable because of the hours. I mean, it was anywhere between an hour and 2 hour drive to get there. And so add on that, working until 1 in the morning very often, because it's nonprofit. And it was just also not only a theater, but it was big in the Little Tokyo community. So I was the face of us and had to go to all these meetings and stuff for community stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was 90 hours a week working
Wow.
or driving to work and
So
from.
you were just slumming it during the whole time you
Yeah.
weren't
And
acting.
so, but then that allowed me to then go to other places, and I worked at Valley Performing Arts Center, which is a funny thing because we thought I was going back into acting at that point, but then I had seen this article, and we had done my wife ran me through this SWOT analysis for several hours, and that's when we said, okay, going back into acting, but then uh, I saw this article on this Valley Performing Arts Center, and which there was nothing like it in the Valley. Is a $125 million facility,
Wow.
and with 4 levels. And so then I left that on the table for her, and I'm about to fall asleep, and my wife's going, "Honey, look it, they have positions opened." And I go, "Okay." And there was one like house manager, and I said, "Okay, I've never been a house manager. I supervised them, but," and she goes, "Well, you have transferable skill sets." And I'm like, "Okay." And I was like, "Well, let me think about it." And then I couldn't go back to sleep. I was up for 3 hours researching house managers and the theater and all that stuff. And the next morning I told her, "Okay, I will apply for this one job," because I knew it was important for her. And I said, if I get it, I'll do it. If I don't, we go into acting, back to acting." And she said, "Okay, well, I got it." So,
Well,
and there were a ton of applicants.
so I'm a musician, so same thing.
Yeah.
Most actors transferable skills means waiting tables. It's good.
Bartending.
Well, the weirdest thing, and people, I mean, they hear about it, but if you're here in LA, you will sometimes go in and see somebody, and if you ask what are they really doing, if they're waiting tables, usually it's, well, I'm an actor or a
Yeah.
musician, and that's fine because during the process of ramping up, we almost all end up doing some other temporary side gig because acting, music, they're very difficult to sustain a living and sustain enough revenue to have a family. And
And it's
people,
harder now than
yeah,
when I started.
yeah, although, on the music side, it's changed. Now with YouTube, people can get monetized and do some things. I see these young guys and gals, and they're doing some interesting things, and they can get monetized on YouTube, and they can earn enough to sustain it. So so performing becomes their side hustle in a
Yeah.
different format, and they can break through a whole different way. So tell us, so now you take a bunch of years off. This cracks me up. The first gig you get after that is The Young and the Restless, which,
Yeah.
I don't know, don't take this wrong, but
It was
you're not young and you probably weren't restless.
But
But
it's in the exact same building that I did Bold and the Beautiful. So I was
oh,
like, I was starting the second act. That's what I called it. This is the start of my second act in my career, and
uh-huh.
I'm starting it the same way I started the first act.
Okay. And so that turned into, I assume, a whole string of. First off, if you tell somebody here in the LA area that you're on a soap, they're like, "Oh, hey, there's like how many actors are there on the total? I mean, recurring. There's not that many. It's a handful of people. Those are plum jobs that people want because sustainable income, reoccurring character. I mean, it's a great way to get into this. And then what happened after that?
I had reached out, so because that job came, I was finishing up a Valley Performing Arts Center, and in my last, when I wanted to leave, it took about 4 months to leave because he asked if I could create this report for him and also help bring in someone to replace me and help train them, all that stuff. And I said, "Of course, I will do that." And then he goes, "I understand you're going to meetings and you'll want to start reestablishing your career. So your time is your own. Just as long as you can get these things done, and your paycheck will be the same." And I
Wow.
said, "Great." And so then in that final week, I had met with, I reached out to my commercial agency because I figured that would be the easiest to go back, and they were still relevant. They're an agency called BBR. And they, I emailed them, and 10 seconds later, because the subject was Tim Lunabus. And then I said, "I'm coming back. Will you have me?" And 10 seconds, one of the owners was calling me and saying, are you kidding? Yeah. And so I said, "Okay." And so the next day, I had to go in for a meeting and stuff. And then the next day after the meeting, and this is like I have a few days left still at work. Uh, they said, "This isn't commercial, but it's theatrical." Sheila Guthrie, who I knew, she used to cast, she was in Jeff Greenberg casting office, and they did Cheers and Wings and stuff like that way back when. She was casting Young and the Restless. And I was like,
Wow.
first, that was crazy to me that she was doing that. And then the other was that she wanted to see me. She saw me on the, because I went in for the meeting, and that night I had to. Old days, they took care of everything. Now they were like, you need to go to this site and upload your information and all that stuff.
Okay.
So I did that, and then the next day is when they reached out. And so my first reaction was, I can't audition because they wanted to see me the next day. And I'm like, I'm still working, I'm trying to get this report done. And then I thought, yeah, idiot. It's like, this is your future. So this is now where your priority, lies. So I did it. It was 5 scenes,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't even know if I was going to be relevant.
Right.
And so, and if I still, how the chops were, because it wasn't like I was going to class or anything or practicing. And it was funny. We go in, at first, driving up to the studio that I had started out with was very surreal for me. Then it's on the same floor, the casting,
Wow.
it's on a different end of the hallway. And then I go in, and then she brings me in, and I go, Sheila, I go, it's been 7 years since I've done this. And she's like, what? I go, yeah, I left acting. And she goes, I did not know that. So then we start doing it. She has an assistant and who's reading with me, and she's running the camera. First scene goes by, and she goes, cool. Any questions or anything? And I go, no. And she's just nodding her head. And she goes, let's do the second one. Do the second one. And she's like, Tim, it's like you never left. And I was like, well, I don't know. And then did the third one, did the fourth one. We kept talking in between a little bit. And even to the point where, because we have a relationship from the old days,
Right.
she might have said some things where the assistant was like, this is weird,
Mm-hmm.
because it was like we were friends or buds. And then we did the fifth one, and then she goes, oh my God, Tim. She goes, you have a gravitas you did not have before.
You
And
were
then
so
the
older.
assistant goes, did we just do one take on each scene? And it was like, yeah. So then I also knew I memorized my lines in a day, and I was, so that hadn't gone.
Right.
And, but yeah, and it was a great experience once again, working and coming back.
So I want to
Much
drill
longer
down on
answer
something
than you
here.
expected.
You
Hmm?
mentioned at that point you were not going to classes or taking workshops. So I think people in the narration business do not understand that actors here in LA, when they don't have something, what are they doing? They're just sitting on their hands and watching the sunset go down and going surfing. And is that what most actors are doing in between gigs?
Maybe most actors, but the ones that are successful are creating, whether they're working in theater and writing stuff, doing short films, creating short films, going to events, networking events, and stuff like that. Um, Constantly working and working. They're having to carve out a living while pursuing what they love and going to class.
And going to class. What kind
Yeah,
of classes would you be? What kind of classes would normally be like? I thought you already know it all because you had done it
I don't go
before.
to class.
Yeah, I know you don't
Yeah,
now. You may, but people go to workshops. People are going. They're constantly in this city,
yeah.
going to something where they're refining their craft. I mean,
Yeah, and
even
there's
after 20,
plenty of
30 years, right?
teachers. Yeah, there's plenty of teachers because you have to figure how many actors come to this city a year, and actors who tend not to make it, and there's a percentage of them that turn to
Right.
teaching. And so there's plenty of teachers down here, and I think that's sort of an art too, is finding out who's worth their salt and who's not.
Yeah, yeah. And okay, so let's say now at some point here you're acting and you're doing real well again, and your second act is
And I
working. So
use social media, by the way, to get my first network television jobs.
did you?
Yeah. I
That
first thing I did was like, well, I need to let people know who know me that I'm coming back. And so I found some on social media, and casting person called me in. Well, one I sent, we have a good friend who's a executive producer and creator and Emmy winning director and all that stuff. And so I knew he had a show at the time. It was The Real O'Neills. And so I emailed him and said, hey, Todd, I don't know if you know, but I'm coming back. I took like these cheesy photos with a friend so I had something that looked like me, and then updated a resume, and I sent it to him. I said, if you can, have your casting person send this to your casting person, and just let them know when something's appropriate. And like in 20 minutes, he had responded back to me with forwarding an email from them. So like he had already sent it to them. They said, "Oh, we love Tim. This is awesome. Okay." And then he sent that to me, and within a week, I was working on their show.
Wow.
And
Well,
then yeah, go on. And
so
then Doubt was another thing I guest starred on, and that was from a casting director who saw me on there. I had requested friendship, and he asked his assistant, "Where's Tim been?" And he says, "Will he go in for this?" And actually, it wasn't a guest star; it was a co-star. It was
what's the difference?
really good scene. Co-stars tend to be smaller these days. It's weird. This is different. When I came back, there's a thing called a 5-day co-star. So I worked on Criminal Minds under a 5-day co-star, which was bigger than a lot of guest stars, 1-day guest stars.
Huh.
So it's weird. However, it was through the
Okay.
contracts negotiations. But
And is that,
anyway,
I assume
it
there's
tends to
just
be
different.
guest star, special guest star, co-star,
Okay. Way
under
over my.
5.
I have been never been anybody's star, no, and that's fine. So at some point though, now the narration, it's the same thing,
Yeah,
or not. How at what point did you
it's
decide?
not the same thing
Okay,
in
good,
terms
thank
of
you.
getting established.
So why in the world would a guy who could talk to casting directors and they will cast you in 20 minutes, get involved in
That's
the
a small
narration
fraction, by the
business?
way.
Okay,
Most of
okay,
them don't even know me still since
okay.
I've been back,
So,
I
but
would
you
say.
had, yeah, but hey, one of the things about being more mature is that if you're doing it right, you're constantly developing contacts over life and relationships. And I will absolutely admit, I did not know you before the audiobook world.
You were one of the first people I reached out to. I don't know
Yeah,
if you know that.
I didn't know that. I did not know that. And so we had crossed on social media, I'm sure. And then so then I start noticing you. And unfortunately, I didn't know your background, but I knew, all right, this guy's serious. And this year, you were an Audi finalist. But at one point, when you made the transition, how did
Where's
audiobooks
that
come
medal
up as
behind me? There it
an
is.
option for you?
I was, I think, like a lot of actors that have gotten into narration the last couple of years, few years, it was the pandemic.
Okay.
It was production shutting down, on camera production shut down. And I was like, okay, uh, I don't want to just sit here. I
Right.
want to try to figure out something. I used to do animation voiceover.
Okay.
And so I thought, okay, I'm going to, I created a studio, which I'm sitting in right now. I reached out to my manager and let him know that I wanted to do this. And so then I reached out to a couple of VO friends and said, "What do I need to do?" And they actually provided me with some of the stuff that's in my room. But I created a demo. One of them said, "Tim, I'll master a demo for you. Just get me everything and provide." He's a musician too, so he provided music where it was needed. It was a combination of stuff that I had done that I knew I could still do, that I had done before, and new clips that I had created. And so we created that, and then my manager had it, and then nothing really happened. I think it's such a difficult, area to get in. And my wife over the years had said, "Why don't you do audiobook narration?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I loved it because I always loved to read." And when she'd hear me read to the kids and how much they loved it and stuff like that. And but it's like, "Oh yeah, great idea. I'd love to be a series regular. I'd love to be leading a film, that's making 100 million." To me, it all seemed the same thing. Like
And
that's,
audiobooks seem the
like it
same?
just seemed unattainable to me. Like I didn't know what to do.
Okay.
And so anyway, and then when I created the studio and everything, and then I looked into software. So one thing that almost every narrator does not know about me was that even though I have been doing this for a little over a year, I actually was in Dion Audio's pool probably now 6 years, 5, 6 years. And that's only because I was an actor who had a friend who was an actor who did audiobooks also say, "Hey, they're looking for Asian American, you know, narrators." And I said, "Sure." And then I auditioned and I got in, but that was it. I
You mean you
had
were on
maybe
their roster
I was
as
on their
a
roster. I had a handful of auditions that I did on my phone and sent it, and never got anything. and never pursued anything above that. Never looked into it, never got serious about it.
Okay.
And then my wife, in after I have the studio and it's not being used, in 2021, I would say October, she goes, Jenna Kino, did you see her post? And I said no. And she had posted something about Elise Arsenault's The Great Audiobook Adventure and this free class that you could take. And I remember that day I had gotten, during the pandemic, uh, my son and I, the way we got out of the house is we played Pokemon Go. And so I totally got into this with him. And then at some point he fell out of it. And then I was this weird older man driving alone in his car to parking lots, meeting other older men to trade Pokemon. And it's so crazy. And so when she said about the class, I was like, yeah, it's gonna kind of go out for Pokemon Go. In my head, I'm thinking that. So I know, when she says, why don't you do it? I like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. So I took this class and that changed everything. Because immediately I understood, from someone with a lot of industry experience as in the on camera world, it made sense what she was saying. And then I looked at the course and stuff, and it was like a very nuts and bolts course. And I got, so I ponied up for it. I went into the community, which comes with it, the Facebook group, and saw all these people who were alumni and who were now working,
Yep.
and it just made sense. It's like the key is that I can directly approach producers,
Right.
and that they will actually hire me
Right.
based on those, that they will communicate with me.
Yeah.
So, through that, yeah, Amber, hi Amber, she just said best accountability partner ever. She was my very first accountability partner. And well, we were taking this course together, and my thing was my dad was dying. And so for a year, it took me a year to take this course, because I always had these things. I have kids that had their own stuff, but I would never leave it. And I came back, had my website, samples, all this stuff. And mid-September of 2022 is when I sent, okay, my initial reach outs. And this is where the proof had to be in the pudding.
Right.
And I got 2 offers off of that initial reach out. Um, and the thing is, the reason why it's different than the on-camera world is that in the on-camera world, you have a ton of talent, ton of actors. You have a certain amount of roles. Bigger now because of streaming and all that stuff, but still many more actors than there are opportunities available. In the audiobook world, it's like flipped. You have all this content that, the publishers need to record, and indie authors, there's a ton of indie authors out there. And so all this content and a certain amount of narrators.
Right.
And yes, more have jumped in because of the pandemic, actors like me, but it's still small compared to the content. And so everyone's looking for people, and everyone's not feeling the competition. Narrators don't feel the competition with
Right.
each other. And
Right.
so everyone's giving and generous and supportive, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's really wonderful.
Yep. Well, 2 things. So tell us about
Oh, and your class was the first thing that I took because I was with Dion. I looked up like what software and they said, well, we tend to use Studio One. And so I got that, and then I had to look online. When I downloaded and opened it up, I was like, "Oh my freaking God, I cannot do this." And so then I looked online and I found you
okay.
and took your class.
That's I'd forgotten about that. Here's the funny thing. Now, but you have
It's
the
also
same
how I
thing.
met PJ. I started taking Dion classes.
When we're all doing this, we all communicate. If you keep doing this for a while, you communicate with so many people. I don't even remember where we met. I don't remember what we did together. Uh, who I've talked
I can tell
to.
you where we first met.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Where's
brought
that?
this. I brought this hat in
Oh.
at Johnny's
Yes.
retreat.
Yeah.
So I had literally recorded my very first book right before going to that retreat.
Oh
So
wow.
I was a total newbie when we first met.
Wow. Oh, it's awesome. But so Tess, so here's the one thing that I find fascinating is people like you who succeed in this business do a couple things. you didn't just say, okay, I'm going to just talk to my dog about how this should work. I don't think. Maybe you did talk to. I talk to my dog all the time, and he loves my conversations and my readings. But you were looking, and you went to the New England Narrators Retreat. You took my
That
course.
was huge for me.
Oh yeah, you took other courses. So you did two things at once.
Yeah,
You networked with established professionals, and you were practicing, and so you were both growing your acting chops, but you also were looking for people and building your network in this
yeah.
business,
And
which you
I did not reach out until I could hit the ground running.
yeah.
Even though I wasn't sure at first if hitting the ground running was going to work. But yeah, I made sure to really have an understanding and have the tools, have the skill set honed to enough to be
Right.
able to do this. And then even through all last year, I'm still learning.
Well,
I'm still learning now
yeah.
whenever I do a book. But
Yeah. But that's normal. So let's talk about a
yeah.
couple things here. So Amber gave you a little shout out here about the best accountability partner ever. So let's talk about that. Why in the first off, you know more about acting than I've ever. I mean, you've forgotten more about acting than I've ever known. And so, why in the world are you having an accountability partner here in this business? What in the world does that give
I
for
think
you?
Amber was wondering that when we were first working together. I'd never had it, but it's part of the course. So that's why, to be completely honest, part of the great audiobook adventure is you have an accountability partner.
And how did that
And
benefit you?
oh my goodness, especially knowing what I went through, in terms of my dad and having all these hiccups,
Mm-hmm.
having to meet with Amber, uh, then was key because and then sometimes we'd meet and I didn't have anything on my end because of stuff, but I
Right.
was still connected with it through her.
Okay.
And and then she was great in terms of, being understanding of my situation and then helping me, to not give up on the program.
Okay. But I do think people don't understand. We're all sitting in our little cubicles, and um, have you ever had self doubt?
Oh, well, in the beginning when I did my initial reach outs, I had self-doubt. It's
Yeah.
like, is this really gonna work? Are people gonna look at me and say, okay, this guy has at the time 0 books.
Right.
I'm gonna send him an offer,
Right.
you know?
Right.
I think a key for me and maybe a leg up that I had was because of my acting background
Sure.
and because being mixed race, I think also plays into it. Um, and the fact that one of the things you're supposed to do when you take this course is create a website
Hmm.
because producers need to be able to go, and see your stuff.
Right.
And I was like, I fought my whole career when I was an actor, well, I'm still an actor, but when I was starting and everything, I was like, I'm never creating. It just seemed too much about me. I'm not into that. I'm not into having my own website. And so I never did one for acting on
Right.
camera. Well, now if I have to fricking do this website, then I am going to do it. And so I created a website that has, all of my on-camera stuff, has interviews, just has all these things. So if a producer went to my website to look at samples and then started to go, "Oh, he's got this other stuff," and then started clicking around and finding different things, I think it does become impressive.
Okay.
I'm not
Oh, it
gonna lie
is.
about that.
It is. I just put up the link the second time. I had put it up at the beginning of the chat. I just put it up again in the chat. And in fact, I'm going to go. So I'm actually going to highlight it in here so that you get a chance to see this. And you should go out to
And
his site.
Byron just asked a very good question.
All right. Well, we'll look at that. And then the thing that happens is when you go to the site and if you go to his IMDb, you definitely are impressed. But now in the beginning, that doesn't. I mean, there's a lot of good actors here, and it is about Amber saying, "Hey, what's been the trickiest part about transitioning from film to audiobooks?" And then we'll go back to Byron's
Yeah.
question. So, what surprised you that you thought, "Hey, I'm an actor. This will be easy for me because of my background," and then what happened here?
Oh, mouth noises, sitting in a place for hours, and and, like, I remember the first day of recording, and it was a situation where I needed to spend long hours with this book in order to get it done in time to go to Johnny's retreat,
Okay.
I, like, got up at one point, and I was like, "What the" my hip. I was like, "What the hell is that? I've never experienced that pain before." And so literally, I thought at that point, I'm toast. It's like, here I spent all this time preparing for this career, and I'm not gonna be able to do it because physically I can't handle it.
Ah.
Fortunately, my body got used to it.
And what do you do
So
now? Do you do anything in addition to?
I should, but I don't.
Okay,
I
okay.
oh, I do. But one thing, Melissa Benson showed, she's really good about. I
She
think she has some type of
she helps
yoga,
people make
physical
sure
therapy.
that they're, yeah.
Yeah, she has a background in ergonomics and how to best hold your body posture and all that stuff. So she changed how I record in terms of where the mic is, where I'm sitting and all of that. So instead
Cool.
of hunched over and, I'm now more upright
Right.
and that made a big difference.
Well, I will say, too many people. One of the things, and you see it on the Academy Awards. You'll see it when people, once you put a mic in front of people, for some reason, the tendency is to lean into the mic.
Yeah.
Now, mics don't need me to lean into them. Mics need to be positioned correctly so that I can be just so. Uh, we're gonna have to have her on the show to talk about that stuff. But uh, so you were kind of mentioning that if you were trying to squeeze things in, have you ever overbooked yourself?
So I had those two books from that first offer, first outreach that I did.
Yeah.
And that took me to the end of 2022, between that and the retreat and holidays and stuff.
Okay.
And so then starting 2023, it's become a tradition now that I will send an email out on my birthday or reach out on my birthday, which is January 5th. And I sent this reach out and it was crazy. I got 5 books out of that reach out.
Wow. But how many
And
people are on your? Wait, wait. Let's back up. How you're reaching out? You sent it to me and 2 other people.
no, I'm sending out to about 20 people, 20, 25 people at that point.
Oh man, that's not
You know,
many. How
and
who's on that list? How did you build that list of?
so the list was built from using the APA website for first looking at publishers and going
Oh,
there and then seeing the names on there.
okay, okay.
There are people like that I met at Johnny's retreat,
Hmm.
Iris McElroy and Eric
Yes,
Black,
right,
and
right.
um,
So they
Eric
knew
was
you.
they knew me,
Yes.
and so Eric gave me my first fiction book, and
Okay.
he was one of the 5 that I got. But it was crazy because and Tantor was the first publisher to give me an offer, direct offer, uh, from those first 2 books, and they have been the gift that keeps giving. So it's been nonstop with them, and so they offered a book, and then it was just all of a sudden I couldn't make it work. It was like time-wise, it just wasn't working. So then I had to reach out and have 1 book rescheduled. I just said, "Look, can is it possible to push this back a week?" And we did.
Okay.
And so I ended up making it all work, but it was crazy.
Right.
Um, that and the end of the year. So the beginning of the year and to the end of the year ended in crazy ways because the end of the year was a 30 it was almost a 35-hour book. It ended up, I think the way maybe we'll see how it sounds because I cut it down, I think, to 31 and a half or something like that. But which hurts me in terms of my income, I guess. But um, I I had not that was the first time I had a book of that length. And, it was I got it, I think in October, but in November is when I started it, when I could start it. And then early on, I realized there's no way in hell I can make the due date on this. And I've always handed in things on time early, when I can.
Mm-hmm.
And so I reached out to it was Philip Miller, and I reached out to him and said, "Can we, this is what's going on." And he goes, "Tim, thank you so much for reaching out this early. So
Right.
let me reach out to the publisher." And we were able to push it back from December 18th to December 30th. And
Okay.
then, but that was a thing where I also had a couple of other books that had come in. So now I happened to be at a party, a holiday party where Carrie Height was there. and we had a nice conversation. We had just worked on a book together for Audible, and so he told me the story about how he had 3 books he was doing simultaneously, and it was basically round the clock. And he would record for a bit, then he'd take a nap, then he'd get up and record. And now, literally, like a week and a half later, I'm doing the same thing. So not advisable,
Okay.
not advisable at all.
Right.
Schedule better.
Yeah, and I think,
And I have a better idea now when I get
yeah,
offered a
I
book like that. I had to
figured
turn one down
in the
like that
beginning, nobody
recently.
knows what it's really going to take. I mean, Chris asked a question here. Do you even have an average production time for your finished hour right now? Meaning, so now you get a 35-hour book in, and
Yeah,
I'll bet you have some sense of, okay, that's 2 months. It wouldn't be 2 months if you could do it all at once, but life is not
right,
that way. You have to
right.
interleave other books, family stuff. What else? Do you kind of
I
have
t-
a,
I tend to give myself 4 hours per finished hour of prep and knowing that other things are going to come into play.
okay,
That's roughly about, I tend to give myself a good amount of time.
okay, okay, and then now, but let's
Still
back
not
up.
working all the time, but
But you also you did the reach out early on in the book and talked to the publisher about, hey,
yeah,
I kind of I don't know if you told them directly you had overbooked yourself, but you could say after I've done all the prep, I've realized I probably need an extra couple weeks. Doing that early in the process is masterful, because the people that wait until the end, then all of a sudden it just looks like you mismanaged the time you were given. If at the beginning you do it, you look like a good solid person for them to work with in the future as well.
yeah,
How, the
yeah,
response overall was pretty like, hey,
yeah. In fact, that guy just emailed me saying he's looking forward to working more together. So
okay,
he was happy at the time.
yeah,
It's communication is just huge.
right. But you've
And
probably learned that in the acting world, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, and even when I left acting in the corporate world or wherever I was, however you want to describe it,
Hmm.
nonprofit, and the other one was kind of corporate feel. It was,
Yeah,
but uh, it's all about communication. People need to be aware because there are other factors involved. It's not just about you. Other people are being scheduled around what
yes,
you said,
yes.
what the due date is.
Well,
So,
yeah, there's
yeah,
some production department in the background that knows that a 35-hour book is scheduled to come in the middle of December. And if they're in the middle, if you're telling them early enough that, wait a minute, it's going to come in 2 weeks later.
yeah. I told them in November that
Okay. So
this wasn't.
they're happy to have that, because that allows them, because they have to be prepared. That's a bunch of work on their end. And knowing that it's coming in at a different time is insanely helpful. And one of the things I see from newer people, they're afraid to ask that
Yeah,
question. They're afraid to ask for more time. They're afraid to let it be known that, whoa, wait a minute, I'm in trouble here. But if you do it
yeah.
early enough,
You
it's
should be
totally different.
afraid not to do that.
Okay.
Really, because yeah, you don't want to make waves or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, they're used to working with a bunch of narrators, and narrators always have schedules that are wonky. And
Right.
so it's the ones that don't communicate, that don't say, "Hey, heads up, can we possibly move this?" And then 2 days before saying, "You know what? I'm not gonna be able to get this on time." It's like n that you will possibly not work for them again.
Right.
So
Right.
it behooves you to communicate early when you realize what's going on.
Okay. That's fantastic. Well, so what has been the trickiest part? Amber asked a question. Hey, what's the trickiest part from your point of view, transitioning from being an on-camera actor to working audiobooks? Is there
Well,
what?
I think if I left on camera to become a narrator, that would be a much easier transition, but when you're continuing to work on camera, that definitely makes it's I've had situations where, the strike helped because I didn't have to worry about it during the strike. But having auditions, here's one, is just the auditions themselves. I might have 2 or 3 auditions in a week, and when I have an audition, on-camera audition, everything else stops,
Okay.
because I need to get that stuff down and I need to put it on tape and send it to them. Or sometimes with commercial auditions suck now because they're now some of the companies want you to come in person again as opposed to
Oh,
putting on self-tape. And then that's travel time. So I might all of a sudden lose 3 hours because of a commercial audition. So, it's hard, and I'm still working with that. I'm still navigating that, but I realize when I do a due date, schedule date, I'm having to keep in mind that I might be guest starring a week because I only find out a few days before if I'm guest starring on a show,
Wow.
uh, in a month, I mean, during that time.
Yeah.
And so I need to build in extra time when I schedule, and I just lost out on a 30-hour book because I couldn't see how I can make it work unless I had a later, due date, and they said really flexible due date. Well, it turned out to be not so flexible because they did want it done in the spring. And after having just done that 30-plus hour book, I knew no way in hell.
Yeah.
So I had to pass on it.
Yeah, but here's the funny thing. That casting director is going to be pretty, I mean, realize here's a pro, somebody who instead of just saying I'll take everything, and then failing their due date, and then getting behind, and then being stressed, and then doing a just okay job, not up to your potential, that really hurts too. So you got
Yeah.
to make your choices there, and it's a much better way to do it the way you've done it. Jim's asking a great question for you, because you have morning voice, you have evening voice. Do you have a better, when do you like to record? How do you schedule your day?
Well, here's the thing is that I'm also Mr. Chauffeur for my 15-year-old son.
Oh,
So, the sweet spot also revolves around when do I take him to school? When do I pick him up from school? When do I take him to his martial arts class? Blah, blah, blah. And so, I tend to, when I first started, I was doing like really early morning.
mm-hmm,
But then what I had to do was because my wife, since the pandemic has been working in her office at home, uh, and in the beginning, it didn't seem to be an issue, but then I moved my mom in. And so my mom, we realized we can't have her upstairs. It's too much to navigate stairs. She's 90 years old now. So her bedroom took the place of Jenny's office downstairs, and now Jenny's right 2 doors away from me. And they talk their meetings all the time. I don't know how they get work done. All they do is Zoom. So it's like, and laughing at times, and so I had to do early morning recording at that point, not the sweet spot,
okay.
because like you said, voice. So it takes me when I'll wake up at 3 a.m. and I'm not in the booth until around 4 because I'm just
Wait, wait,
going
wait,
through my
wait, wait,
routine
wait.
to try to get
Not
ready.
you wait all the way to 4 a.m.? I can't believe that, loser. Wait, so
So,
I
so my
used to go
sweet
to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning when I was a musician, so I don't even understand that. Is there a time that, so wait, go
so
back.
I'll tell Jim my sweet spot is really I drop my son off, I come back, and I finish getting ready, for the day or whatever. And I just take a little time, like I'll be on my phone for a little bit or something. And then probably around 9:30, 10
Okay.
is when I'll go in the
All right,
morning.
that's your idea. And how long would you then, on average, if you started at say 9:30, how long will you
I
record
go
before?
until I pick him up from school. And that's, I leave the house around 2:15, 2:30.
Okay,
So,
so
and then it's not like I can just record straight through that time because my stomach will say, no, you need to have something. Otherwise, I'm going to screw up your recording.
right.
And so, it's popping in, popping out, and yeah.
Are you now?
So I
So
usually go about an hour,
uh
hour
huh,
and a half,
uh huh.
and then I'll go use the restroom or I'll take a little snack, and then I'll come back in and repeat the process.
Okay, so for you, it's an hour to an hour and a half at a shot, and then you take a break.
Like a 10-minute break, 15
Okay.
minute.
Yep, 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 yep. And Paul's talking about nobody likes those kind of surprises. We're going back to you have to let your client know,
Yeah.
and obviously you've gotten to be pro at that, and really people like Paul that have been in the business for a long time, they know if they're going to be late, the sooner you tell somebody, the
You,
better.
you gotta treat it like your significant other. You would be communicating to your significant other. Hopefully, that's how you have a successful relationship. When you don't, then that's how it becomes unsuccessful. It's the same thing with producers.
Okay. Well, I don't think I haven't thought of a producer as a significant other, but okay, I'll go with that. So yes, and Jim's talking about he wrestles with the morning voice versus afternoon. First off, there are some people that are better in the morning and better in the afternoon, and I don't know if there's a right or wrong on that. I don't think there is. I
And I
think
think
that
if you do vocal exercises and stuff, that helps to minimize that. You know,
mhm.
like it helps to get your voice. If you do it before each session, then it'll help even that out.
Wait, what kind of exercises? What tell us about these vocal exercises crap that you're
Well, you know,
talking
you
about?
you have breathing exercises, you have alliteration exercises, you have, you know, just different types of things you do. I mean, I learned in theater, you know, acting of these things that you do before you go. And then I know, like, you know, I did get this Nick Redmond has these cards that has stuff. So I actually got a packet of those over the holidays that I haven't used yet, but I'm gonna look at those.
So what are
I
they?
also
What are?
have like a straw thing that you
Uh-huh.
blow through,
Yep,
you know,
yep.
so just different things. I think
What
everyone
are
can
your
find what,
like what kind of vocal warm-ups do you do? Do you remember any of them off the top of your head?
like, you know, for alliteration, it's pa 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 pa, ba 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 ba, ga 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 ga, ta 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 ta, that type of stuff. And
Okay.
then, yeah, then, and you can hear I got that thing in there. You go down and then you go back up. If I were a really good actor, you wouldn't hear that transition frog in there.
You might at certain times. Sometimes you
Or
need,
I said I shouldn't have said if I were a really good actor. I should say if I wasn't. No, I'm not even gonna say lazy. I'm not a lazy actor. But
No, and here's the thing that people oh, and so Rebecca's saying she found someone named Rick or Edmund who has a
Nick
5 minute
Redmond,
vocal
that's who I was just talking about with the
with your
it's
card.
Radman, but with the cards. I have them
Okay.
right here actually.
Do you have them? Look at that. Look at that. The voice deck.
The voice
Okay.
deck.
So now
Yeah.
I don't understand you. You're actually continuing to
I'm
invest in your
speaking English.
business and
What?
your look at it. Okay.
Mindful minute, body jiggle.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah.
There's different things.
Spine rolls.
Spine rolls.
Is
So
that
physical and vocal she has.
okay? And what that means is that if you don't take care of, do some things to take care of your physical body and your, remember, I don't think people understand in the early stages, your vocal cords are muscles. And your vocal cords obviously respond to your fitness, and certainly sitting around all day is the kiss of death in this business, but we do it all the time, and it really is helpful if you're doing something. Heller's out walking his dog. I'm learning pickleball. I go out now most. I'm actually doing exercises now that I haven't done in a while because I want to be better at something else, and I just find I'm so much more productive that it's absolutely worth taking a certain amount of time. And I'm gonna guess you're doing this other stuff because it allows you to be more productive when you're doing your recordings. Close?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I like these questions coming up, by the way.
Which one?
Chris says,
Do you
do you
record?
record, then edit, then record again, or just straight through record? So I only work with publishers. I haven't worked with indie authors, and you know, so I don't know if that changes things. But when I self-direct for publishers, I'm punch and rolling. If I work with a director, then it's open roll. So then, you know,
Yeah, but
yeah.
somebody else is getting to do all that stuff, and
Yeah.
so
And punch and rolling, there was someone that said if you had any tricks or something, I think at some point, and your crap button is like the best thing for me.
okay.
You know, when I'm recording, he told me about this button that we programmed in the software. So I'll record and mess up, and instead of having to stop and go back, I just hit my C button, C for crap, and it starts up again where it was recording. It's still recording. So
Yeah.
I just go right back into it. So that saves time.
Yeah, and we just, I mean, it really works out that I thought that was the dumbest thing in the world. So I learned that trick originally. There was a piece of software that did it and made it, and so and the person was whining about they didn't have it in Studio One, and I looked at it and thought, oh, you could program that in easily and make it available. And so I created something
Best
that I
thing.
called the crap key, and my wife and I looked at it and said, this is dumb. And then after we start using it, it's like we use it all the time and almost can't. Oh yeah, and I have. This is the good. There's one lady that I know that she programmed it into her F key, and I thought, boy, that's so me because I will say that out loud to myself when no one else is around, but I still have it as my C key because
I say it
publishers.
out loud
Yeah,
very often, and anybody can be around.
yeah.
And that's why I don't do like club room. I don't record live for anybody. I just do it myself.
Okay. Yeah, it is one of those things. I have to be careful about not swearing in public because it's a bad thing. But
Amber had a question about uh, do I prefer self-direct or like directed sessions? As a parent, I like self-directing a lot, but my preference as an actor is to be in directed sessions because several times I've worked with directors, just like working with directors on camera or on stage, it's a collaboration. And
right.
so, I come with what my perception and homework and my choices, and then someone else brings in something that I hadn't even thought of. And
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, because I'm the type of actor who likes to play. And so I'm never about, well, this is how it should be or how I want. No, I'm here to play. And so mold me. If you have ideas, I will run with them.
That's super cool. That's super cool. I want to change the subject here.
Yeah.
You just were at the Audis. Do you remember that event? Yeah, it was last week. Okay. Okay. And you have the coolest thing. So you were an Audi finalist. I think I see the little medallion behind you. Yeah, there it is. It's on the wall. Now, tell us about that experience. That one, you got nominated. Two, you have a super cool book. And by the way, I actually got it yesterday, and I have it on Audible, and I'm actually listening to it. And I'm going to pull it up here, and I'll show it on camera. But this is, let me see if I can get that on there. There we go. A Refugee's Dream. And this is super, super cool. And
There's
this
a
was,
book I almost said I was considering saying no to
okay, why?
because I'm not Cambodian,
Oh, you look,
so
neither am
so
I. So what? But you are close. You were,
yeah, if I had said no, you would have done it. So I'm
yeah,
glad I did.
yeah, yeah.
But
That would have been a lose. But go ahead. So first off, the experience. You're
mhm,
not Cambodian, but
right,
they ask you to do this book, and
right.
tell us a little bit about it.
Well, the good thing was that I realized I didn't have to worry about. So, usually when you do nonfiction, you don't get into doing characters. When there's quotes or whatever, you know, I tend to have a general male and a general female voice, and some don't even do that. And then according to what is going on, what the quote's about, there might be a general sort of aesthetic or sense, like there's more urgency with this or whatever. With that, when I looked through it, I realized, no, if I do this book, these are characters. You got his mom, you got his family, you got these soldiers, you got, and there's French soldiers, there's Cambodian soldiers, Vietnamese or what have you. So now, but
So it was nonfiction to begin with, right?
it was nonfiction,
And you
and
treated
it's
it,
kind of like a memoir,
okay,
but I treated it like where it's not like memoir, that these things are happening in the present tense.
okay,
They were moments. That's how it was written, and that's how, if I were to narrate, would narrate it.
okay. Well, let
But
me
the
give some.
key was,
I'm
yeah.
going to interrupt you here. So I met at the Audis. I met your the person whose memoir it was. He's a Cambodian.
Mhm.
His parents were not to give away the whole story, but his parents are no longer with us. And he became a United States Secret Service officer. With he tells stories about Barack Obama going on and being, meaning he'd take a bullet for our president at any time, and he's prepared for that. I talked to him at the Audis afterward in the after
Yeah.
party. Man, great guy. And how did you get this gig? And it's a killer book. I'm only in the first part of it, but I'm already like, gotta listen to this whole thing here.
See, I
And
listen to it and I hear all the things. I was like, oh, I wish I knew that then, or I wish I had done this. But yeah,
yeah, okay, but who
um,
doesn't do that? So how did you get that gig?
it
And
was
tell us
through
about it.
Tantor,
Mm-hmm.
and they, you know, the, sometimes I got a direct offer from Tantor, and sometimes it'll be, they want to put me in the mix. It's author approval.
Okay.
That was an author approval one, and so, I looked at it and I was uncertain, and then, um, I think I had asked the question about, are they expecting accents with this book? And the answer was no.
Okay.
And so then I was like, okay, because I'm never about doing a disservice to another Asian or Asian American's background when the dialogue is obviously accented. Um, and so I threw my hat in the ring, and the story that Let tells me, it's actually Lut, but when he came over to the States, they left out the U, so then it became Let, and so
Okay.
that's how he's been known out here. But he his daughter was the one who made the final choice, so it came down between me and this other guy. I don't know who the other guy is,
Okay.
but she chose me.
All right.
So I
Well,
say cool.
listening to
And
the,
I think my website might have helped.
yeah, yeah,
Which,
yeah. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. Your backstory doesn't
oh,
hurt. And
yeah,
I met the guy.
he's
Fascinating guy.
awesome.
He's
And here's the
humble.
other thing
Uh-huh.
about, we have to do prep and research everything. And it's like there's a freaking large amount of Cambodian names, geography, all that stuff. And I'm like, it was hard to find. And so then we found like Cambodian people to ask, and they're like, well, it could be like this, but it could be like this. And you're like, oh, what the hell? And I'm not confident to send, I'm not going to send a list of how many questions in one email to Tantor to say, hey, I don't know for sure all of these. They would be like, what the hell, Tim? And so, fortunately, the authors reached out to me
Ah,
and said, "Hey, we're the authors of this book, and all this stuff." And then we started a relationship, a friendship, and I was like, "Hey,
right,
let
right,
can we Zoom and can we go over this list of words?"
right.
And so that's how I knew how to pronounce everything.
Okay. And then for those who haven't done this, by the way, if you have a publisher, there's this gray area. Like they sometimes don't
Yeah.
want you to reach out, so you have to check in and figure out, is it okay to reach out to the author? Some publishers are
And with
fine with it.
Tantor, it's not. So I would never have reached out to these guys,
Okay,
but
but
they
they
reached
reached
out
out
to
to
me.
you. Okay. So be aware, if you're working with a publisher the first time, do not go and make friends with the author without going through the publisher.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're just
Whereas
livid.
Audible will have you
Yeah.
connected with the authors.
Okay. So some publishers fine, some don't. And so what was it like at the Audis? So we're getting to the end here.
Okay.
For tell
Oh,
tell us
okay.
about the Audis.
It was awesome. First finding out that I was nominated was crazy because I'm very you know I have goals. I set goals for myself, and my goal to be nominated was for next year. So this
Okay.
is a year ahead of schedule, but never in my first year would I have expected to be nominated. So that was awesome. Going to all the events was fun but crazy. I think I've learned that I'm not, as much as I seem extroverted,
Hmm.
I think I'm a hybrid extrovert introvert. And it took me 3 days to recover after everything to just feel normal again because I felt like I got hit by a Mack truck. But whenever you have this type of event, it's not just that event. There's all these ancillary events that are
Right.
that are around it. Once are involved in narration, anybody who's involved in narration understands this. And so, first we had APAC, which
Right.
was Wednesday, had Thursday off. But of course, back in December, I'm not thinking about when I'm scheduling when books are due that, oh, that might be the week that APAC is occurring and then the week after the Audi. So I had two deadlines for the week.
Right.
And so I was able to get one done mid-month, but the other one, I was up at 3 a.m.
Right.
recording, and then to be able to do stuff during the day. So I was tired that way too. But then Friday was, narrators reached out to me that said, "Hey, you want to join us for this?" And, I only knew one of them really, and the other one kind of. And so then there was these other narrators that I was able to meet. It was awesome. And, and then that evening was a birthday for another narrator. And then Saturday, I'm not naming names, but then Saturday, was, what was it? I'm already forgetting, but it was another couple events that I went to. And then Sunday,
Ye-
Dion had the full master class thing live,
Yep.
and I've been doing several master class seasons, so that was the first time having a live event, which was cool. And then and that evening
Yep.
was the the Audis pre-social.
Right.
And then of course with the Audis, it was like, it's not just going to an event, but I have to go for tech because I'm a presenter.
Right.
And so we had a thing in the morning that I went to, that I was invited to, and then headed over to there. I didn't even have time to go home, and I couldn't pick up my wife, so she had to. We had met at a friend's place that's on Mulholland, and then from there went to. It's where I got ready, and then we went over to the theater for the Audis, and then it was just sort of nonstop,
Right.
and it's just. I mean, I had a producer email me saying, "Hey, it was so great to see you the other day, even so briefly." I'm like, "We met each other the other day?" That's what I'm thinking in my head. I
Yeah.
hope he's not watching this, but I had
Yeah.
no idea.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but it's just constant seeing everyone, and we're all in our booths for the narrator side of it. We're all in our booths so much time out of the week,
Right.
and it's a solo event normally.
Right.
Most
Right.
of our stuff is self-directed.
Yeah.
So to all of a sudden step out and be able to see each other, be able to interact with people who we get each other because we know what each other goes through, that's such a wonderful time.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of introverts, I know, in our community,
Yeah.
but it's more like family being with each other, seeing each other. So I think it's a different situation than if it was a bunch of strangers. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And
we just enjoy seeing each other.
oh, we had a great time. So I was at the after parties, and I met the guy who wrote your
Yeah.
memoir that it's based on. And I monopolized him. I ignored you. I mean, we had a good time. We talked and all, but I was
You can form it that way in your head. Go on.
yeah, yeah. Okay. I enjoyed seeing you, and I said hello, and then I talked to him for probably a half hour straight. One of the most fascinating guys. I've been around in a long time, and for a change, I just shut up and listened to him. He is
Yeah.
great, great guy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're a joy. I love having you on the show. I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to join us here. So
Happy
if you
to.
guys have other questions or comments, be sure to throw them in. You can throw them in after the show's over if you think of something, and
Yeah, I'll go
I'll
through them and I'll
we'll
answer
cycle
too.
back and we'll answer those too, and we will have you back again at another time.
Okay.
But it's just fantastic. And Mr. Heller was ill and has been ill and was originally
He was
scheduled.
avoiding me. I really think that.
I
I
think
think
that
he can
too.
handle me in a group. I don't know about one-on-one, so I think he really was just avoiding me.
Yeah, well, congratulations, and Amber just put that up there, and she's absolutely right.
Thank you,
Um,
partner.
it is wild to watch, and I've seen so many people succeed in this business. Sometimes I'm a little sad because I see people who don't succeed because they
Yeah.
don't do what you're doing, and that's all the little things that you have to do beyond just being a narrator. You have to
And
be
the number
social.
one thing above all of them,
Uh-huh.
because you can look and you can rationalize, oh, well, Tim has this or Tim has this, and that gives him a leg up or whatever. But I really still, it all comes down to my reach outs.
Yes.
I religiously reach out
Yep.
every 6 to 8 weeks.
Yep.
So, and even to producers say they only want this or they only want that. I'm like, well, too bad. You're getting it from me.
Yep.
I send it out. I have no qualms. I have no feeling like I don't want to put that person out. No, that's part of their job. They
Right.
need to hire narrators for their books.
Right.
And if they're only thinking of you when they see your email, it helps them when they realize, oh my God, so and so is perfect for this. So think of it that way. Reform your opinion in that you are helping them, not
Right.
putting them out.
Well, and it'd be different if you were sending them something every 4 days saying, "Why aren't you contacting me back?" No, but they do. Obscurity is the biggest problem that we all have in this business. It's that nobody knows who we are, or even worse, somebody knows about Tim today. Tim gets busy. Tim doesn't reach out to them. Then when a book comes up, he's not top of mind because he's been so busy, but he's reaching out on a regular basis. Am I hearing you right? And letting them know
Correct.
that you're still around. And that is major, major plus. I have seen you at
Correct.
the different events. You are
Correct.
very, very good at keeping contact, saying hello, going and talking to people. And yes, you might be an introvert, but here's what happens in the live situations.
I'm never going to say I'm an introvert.
I
Everyone will
know
laugh
you're
at
not,
that. But I am
but
a hybrid.
okay.
I
But
like that term.
here's the thing that does happen. Tim will come over and say hello, and he makes sure that he'll play an actor. He treats it almost like it's a part and it's a role, and he understands that he needs to be in that role of reaching out to people both through his normal communications, email and that kind of thing, digitally. But then if you're in person, he's looking around the room. I see you work in the room, okay? And that is good. That is so smart.
But with all that,
Mm-hmm.
you still need to be respectful. Still need to be a human being. Like, I'll
Yes.
never forget being at APEC, which was huge for me last year in New York, and being in a room of 700 people, which was crazy in that room, work in the room, going around saying hi to everyone, and then seeing a narrator who was sitting by himself at a table because
Right.
of an issue that he had. He forgot his hearing aid.
Oh,
Am I going to ignore that? Hell no. I
yes.
dropped everything else and went straight to the table and sat with him. And we sat for about 20 minutes. And he was so thankful. He was able to communicate with me because we were so close to each other. And then at some point he said, "Thanks, Tim." He goes, "I'm going to go to my room now." And, so be a human being
Yeah.
and be respectful and don't do it at the expense of others.
All right. Well,
Anyway,
you
but
know,
thanks, Chris, Byron, Nancy, Maria.
yeah, so many people saying good things. But here's
Yeah.
the thing, you have a bunch of people who like you because you are self-aware enough to see the gentleman sitting there by himself and going over and saying hello and doing that in person and doing the reach outs, and you're taking
And
courses.
that's always going to be the number one thing for me. I will help a person in need before, helping myself.
Well, everyone else needs to obviously be more like Tim. And so I appreciate you coming on and look forward to having you back in the future. You have a fantastic day. Thanks for attending. Be sure to like, subscribe. I'm doing a tech show this afternoon. I do it every Tuesday after this. It's at I can never remember the times. I think it's 2 o'clock Pacific and 5 o'clock. So there's a tech show, and you can ask me anything there. So you guys have a fantastic week. We'll see you
Thank you,
next
Don.
week.
Thank you,
Thank
Margaret.
you. Talk to you
All right.
later.
See
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye.